Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Tejera, your host, and this is Industry Standard. Today we have the powerhouse Rufus Sewell. He's an Emmy-nominated actor who's played everything from romantic leads to flawed politicians to real-life royals. You know him as Hal Weiler in The Diplomat and Prince Andrew in Scoop. We talk about his approach to acting, how he builds complexity, why he resists easy labels, and what makes a great on-screen partnership. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Rufus, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Wanted to meet you.
I want to talk about The Diplomat, season 3 that's coming out. For anyone who needs a quick recap, how did season 2 end, and what can we expect from this new season?
God, I blanched at the word recap because it's been a while. I panicked slightly. But season 2, yes, I remember season 2. So at the end of season 2, something pretty major happens. Hopefully the people watching this will know that I think for fear of having a piece of vital news relayed to the president in a way that is advantageous, it occurs to me that no one could be trusted than me to give the news directly to him myself. And I think that's a pretty, classically very bold play that more often than not is behind a kind of spectacular feats of daring do on the political stage. This is what he has his reputation for. Unfortunately, reputation comes along with another dark part, which is when these things go wrong. This is one of them. And the news, because it is so shocking, unfortunately, with the president, who we've established as having a very bad heart and susceptibility to heart issues, takes the news, one could say badly, and expresses this in the form of death on the spot. So it's a really terrifying way to end the season 2, because this comes moments after Kate has made the judgment to fully estrange herself and us from the vice president in a way that is unretractable. And she finds out moments later that the person that she has made political enemies with has just become the most powerful person in the world.
I love that. And I love that line of close your mouth, look forward. So good. Mm-hmm. So The Diplomat has been described as a screwball comedy, but it's also incredibly smart. Mm-hmm. What makes it strike that balance between funny and witty?
Well, I'm very glad you say that because when often I read about this show, they talk about it in terms of drama. When I read it as a comedy. And you make the distinction between funny and witty. I think it's both the same thing as long as it's truthful, I mean, things can be very, very slapstick and still be very true. I mean, one of the things that people recognize about their own relationships in Kate and Hal is the ridiculousness of it. There is one of our favourite scenes in all of season 1 was this ridiculous fight in the bushes that we have. And what I loved about that is it tripped into what was almost a different genre, but it wasn't really, because it still had the element of truth that people recognise, the lengths of stupidity or the depths that you can be reduced to in a normal relationship, how petty, how vindictive, how stupid, how funny. It had the very recognisable grain of truth in it. And when I first read episode 1, I think I was sent 1 or 2 episodes when I was made the offer. And the first scene with Hal and Kate, I remember thinking, I'm going to do this. How am I going to tell my girlfriend? It was just immediately, this is definitely happening, because what I recognised was something that I loved about the screwball comedies, the kind of, what I've now discovered is called the comedy of divorce, which is a particular strain of the screwballs.
I love
which
that.
Is the Philadelphia Story, His Girl Friday. People who have a past, who are kind of inexorably drawn together, and in that friction, hatred, love, there is something that no one else can get near. And I recognise that. but it didn't. Often you see shows that strain for that, as though it's a kind of Instagram filter that they're trying to apply over it, and actors get a little bit cute, when they think the material's got a kind of, and I don't like that kind of signifying of, aren't we witty, aren't we screwball?
Yes.
In fact, it enrages me.
Oh.
Only because I don't like watching shit,
Yes.
I don't mind doing it. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it's like a kind of the tourist version,
Yes.
What I love about this, it reminds me more of the relationships that screwball comedy echoes than a copy of screwball comedy, because it feels very real. And what I love about it is that some people might miss the comedy. And when they do, I have to admit that I judge people by whether they think it's funny or not. If someone says, I watched The Diplomat, why don't you do something funny? I think, oh, you're an idiot. Carry on.
Yes.
And for me, because it reminded me of those things, but it's still the stakes of the drama, which were less interesting to me to start off with. The fact these huge, great story arcs and extraordinary things that happened, I understood they were part of the process, and but for me, what I realised was actually the more extreme the story and the surroundings and the context becomes, the more strain and context that gives us for the comedy, or also just for the drama of it.
Yeah. And so Deborah Cann, her dialogue is very, is famously fast and clever. It's almost like Sorkin-esque, right? How do you prepare for that rhythm?
You don't. That's what I'm talking about when I say actors thinking they're being cute. There's a thing, if you can visualize the actors high-fiving after a take, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. I always like to be a little unsure whether it worked or not, rather than, yeah, we aced it, man.
Yeah.
To be playing the form, obviously you have to have an idea of what the shape of it and what the style of the writing is. But in my view, and I think Keri instinctively is the same, to make it as real as it can possibly be. So yes, it is the type of natural behaviour on which that style is based. I mean, that sounds a little bit pretentious to say that, but that's what you're aiming for. Something that rhymes with the style, almost,
yes.
But not to have the style lead it. I think that's important. I mean, not everyone agrees. Some people like it the other way around, but not me. And I think me and Keri gel very much where we meet the material, It's not to have some kind of overarching instruction as to how the dialogue goes.
Yeah.
Because yes, you have to have an idea. You have to not be dim about it. You have to know that there is a trap to fall into and dance as close to it as you can. But first and foremost, it has to be human and natural.
Yeah, and I know you said in one interview, like, I hate when a character is described as good-looking or described as charismatic.
Or if a moment is described as funny or anything. Like, to have something described is not very helpful. Because I would say one of the most useful things in life at all, but also in acting, is not to fall into following other people's descriptions of anything.
Yeah.
So it's very useful as an exercise to cross out the stage directions that tell you how a moment should be, but also it's very bad to have it set up by dialogue.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so Hal is he can be a little infuriating, but also kind of irresistible. How is Hal Weiler a departure from other roles that you've played before?
I don't know. I mean, it's very difficult. I've read him being described that way, but obviously that's not what I'm trying to play.
Right.
I love his and Kate's, because it's something they share. It's because you can't do it on your own. In fact, all of the characters have this to a greater or lesser degree, but Hal's and Kate's, the frisson they have, the intellectual, the joy of combat, which is expressed in terms of humour. Like in my experience, or my favourite kind of incredibly bright people, there is a sense of the humour, the innate humour in things, in everything. It doesn't mean you're laughing. It just means if there's a joke, you know what the joke is. You might decide to walk away from it, but you're not missing the gag.
Yes.
And that is my experience with exceedingly bright people. unless you're talking about a level of savant or in the tech world. I don't know, that's a different thing. And they have that in the drama is humour, in the humour is drama, and it's all mixed. That you always know, these are people who always know where the power is in the room. They always know they always have a sense of what is coming up, what the dangers are. They know what the joke is.
I love that.
And to have a constant awareness of that and dance around it. You know.
And so tell me a little bit about Hal's physicality. How do you go from being Rufus to embodying Hal physically? Is it is there something in the way that you walk, or is there something you do to prepare for that transition into that character?
I don't know. A lot of these things with me are, I guess, instinctive. There is a sense that I need to find a walk and a way of moving that just makes sense of the way I feel when I am trying to be him, something that, or rather, try to find the things that feel wrong, and there might just be something that feels wrong, a kind of center. And it's not something I consciously do, it's just, once I've found it, I kind of know what it is. And sometimes it just happens, Normally, in the same way, it's the same way with when I read a script and how I play the part ultimately is because of a kind of gut sense that I do not question. And normally if I read something and I get a flash of visualization, and that's what I do. And sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that. You have to struggle to find something, or sometimes you might get some information that slowly makes that evolve in a different direction. But these things are normally instinctive. I will find that I walk a certain way.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because
he's more physically, I'm a bit more frenetic, and I'm very different in so many ways, but there is a core that is similar. I just try to connect.
Yeah. Well, you've played real life people, right? You played Prince Andrew, and you've also played a lot of fictional people. And I guess I'm wondering if the process to embodying a character who's fictional and who's totally, in your head is very different from playing someone who you've watched like archive of.
Well, I haven't played many. I mean, playing Prince Andrew was a very specific thing because everyone knows him. Everyone's seen that interview, so it was my instinct watching him and watching that interview. I had even before, a long time before I knew I was going to play him, I had a sense of the little creature ticking behind the eyes, what my take on it, what was going on with him, and how he was justifying himself, and how he saw his truthfulness, or the fact that he needed to elide certain facts in order for his truth to be known, and this is what people do often. They narrativize their lives to make themselves either the victim or the hero of it.
Yeah.
With Hal, it's easier to a certain extent because no one's going to say, oh, Hal's not like that. What you do have to watch is, once you're aware of who the source characters are, who the influences are, not feel a slave to that either. It's like reading source material, reading biographies, autobiographies, descriptions. These are just opinions. It's just like someone who goes through a script and says, okay, what do I say about myself? What do the other characters say about me? It's very important to remember they could all be 100% wrong. You have to go with your instinct.
Yep, I like that. And I guess so much of it too depends on your scene partner and how they're portraying their character and the energy that you have together. Right?
Exactly, and I think, in my experience, the people that I really enjoy working with the most, they've certainly done their work. They have their, very detailed connection with the material, but then they bring it into the room and it's alive, and it will be affected by, and me and Keri, we don't plan things. We don't really need to talk them through, other than, oh, this one's going to be fun. But, when me and Keri get a really great big 5-page scene that goes through all these things, we just look forward to it. And, we just wait and see how it happens between us. And I think we trust that we're going to both have an understanding, a relation to the material that will match. And it might change from take to take. And if she does something different, I will do something different, and vice versa. And it means you're never trying to repeat something that worked well. You're not thinking of it that way, because that's kind of death to a certain extent. The better to kind of throw a great moment out the window and just try to find a new one, because otherwise it becomes a kind of what you call telephone. An impersonation of something that was real, and it just begins to distort.
That makes sense. You guys have an on-screen chemistry that is very palpable, and I'm wondering if you think that's something that is developed over time via like working with someone over time, or
definitely not in our case. It was there immediately, and it's not a big deal unless it's not there, and it's it's nice when it happens. It just means that it's the opposite of cooperation. In fact, two actors cooperating is what they do when they're trying to show executives that they have chemistry, and it's a ghastly thing to watch. It manifests in finishing sentences at the first time, and folding their arms, all this bullshit stuff that the suits think is cute. In fact, I think my version of it, or our version of it, is about thinking, oh, she'll be fine. You're not helping each other. In fact, you're doing the opposite with a certain amount of glee.
I love that. Have you been in a position where you're like, oh God, I'm with this person, like this random person, we clearly have no chemistry, how do I fake this chemistry?
No. No, obviously there's a certain amount of politeness. You just try to be as nice as possible. Faking chemistry is like, what?
Yeah.
It's just going to get you into trouble.
I'm curious a little bit about the production side of The Diplomat. You guys have some pretty big group scenes. There's these big dinner scenes. What in your opinion as an actor is the more challenging scenes to film? Is that like scenes where you're one-on-one and there's intimacy, or is it scenes where you have a big group around a table and you have to get everyone's sort of POV?
Well, in terms of physical filming, huge great table scenes are they're a lot, because there's so many different angles. But I quite like that, as long as not as long as, but it helps if they do your coverage last, because if you don't have a lot of dialogue, those are the things that are actually the most difficult. There's the only time when I would ask to be if there's an order in which your close-up be shot, I would ask to be done last in that situation. Otherwise, I just say whichever, because you never know what's going to be the right idea until afterwards. But when scenes like that, you kind of have to do a lot of internal writing. What are you thinking? What is your reaction to anything? And if you spend a couple of days doing a scene like that, by the time they come around to you have, even by accident, just out of boredom, worked out an incredibly detailed inner response to everything. So you don't have to act it.
Yeah.
It minimalizes the danger of trying to show what you're thinking when you don't quite know what you're thinking, which is the worst. And I'm not above it. So the more you know about what you're doing, the more you know about what you think, what your actions are, the more you feel, the less you have to display, and it's just there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it takes a lot of work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of fun.
It takes a lot of fun. So Allison Janney was on season 2.
Yeah.
She's a national treasure, as we all know. What has it been like to work with her? What has been her impact on the show?
She's amazing, and I've always been a massive fan of her. We all have, obviously. And I remember watching The West Wing, and how amazing she was, and how amazing she's been in everything. And then met her, and she's a delight, and fun, and naughty, and similar to most of us, and certainly similar to me and Keri. She does her work, but she wants to have a nice time doing it. She's not a dick. It's really like everyone is someone you'd like to hang out with, and she's just so good. It's effortlessly truthful and easy, and. We all screw around a lot, and we try to get the work done, but when it goes wrong, we laugh. It's been fantastic having her, because this character is described, and when they turn up, to have it be someone who actually does have that level of gravitas, but also ease and playfulness. It's the combination of those things. You don't want someone who's just like Darth Vader turning up.
Yeah.
She's very fun, but she also has the big guns.
Yeah. I'm sure it's so amazing to work with her.
It's great.
And
with Bradley Whitford, who plays husband too. It's amazing. The two of them together.
I'm sure. So this is quite a. You're filming in the U.S. We're living in quite a politically contentious time at the moment.
Really?
Who would have thought? What kind of story do you think audiences right now, out of The Diplomat at least, what do you think people are craving right now? Are they craving escapism? Are they craving something more truthful? Something.
You could say they're craving escapism, but what counts as escapism? Judge the state of the world by what counts as escapism. So this level, season 3 level horrors are basically like watching, The Wizard of Oz or something. I think there is something about alternate problems, which is in itself a relief, a kind of relatively normalized version of dysfunction. As it's very interesting. So what I think is very important, this will occasionally rhyme with things we recognize, but I don't think there is any effort you cannot keep up with the pace of events in a normal period of history. Now, it would be impossible. And I think it's a mistake to even try. There's certainly going to be themes that are touched on that will seem very timely. Some of that will be deliberate. And you don't know until the episode comes out and what happened that week, to be perfectly honest. But I don't think it's even feasible, let alone advisable, to try to make it keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know, because I used to watch Homeland, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was that similar dance between, hitting something that's close to home and that will resonate with audiences, but also that's, very much in the fictional world, so you don't get too close.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's ever like a sort of dance you have to play as an actor is, oh no, like I'm purely a fictional character, or am I like touching something that's like...
You don't worry about that kind of thing. You just do, you try to make it truthful. And if it ends up being very similar to something in real life, you let that happen. I don't think you should steer away from what the scene is because it'll remind someone of something. You can't worry about those things. I did a show called The Man in the High Castle that was about, a Nazi America, and has political, as the political situation changed in America and everywhere else. What started to happen was that stories that had been long in development had to be cut because they rhymed too clearly. There were, book burnings and the equivalent of kind of Nazi tiki torch parades in our show that ended up being cut because they happened in the same couple of months that they were happening in real life. And you didn't want it actually takes you out of the story to do things like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't deliberate. It's just like, actually, that's not useful.
That makes sense. I guess as an audience, as a viewer, you want to suspend disbelief. And if something hits too close to what's really going on, you suddenly just think of, real life in the news, and that sort of reduces the point of like the entertainment.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit more about playing Prince Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
You played Prince Andrew in Scoop. Besides watching his infamous BBC interview, what did you do to prepare for that role?
Well, this actually harkens back to what you were saying about the physicality and what you do to kind of embody a different mode. With Prince Andrew, before I even accepted the role, when I read it, I did a little bit of work on it myself because I thought, do I think I could do this? Because instinctively I thought I could mentally get behind it. So even when I was on my own, I was doing things physically, wearing things, padding things, doing stuff to my hair to see if I could believe my own shape in a different way, or my own center, and just somehow manage to kind of rejig things so I could feel that what this was coming out of was, rhymed with him. I keep using that word now, so it strikes me as being too useful all the time. And so by the time I'd accepted the role, and then immediately regretted it, it's like any big decisions like that, I spent months working on it, and working on specifically the interview, but also just walking around and just trying to watching him and trying to work out what that was, what the centre was, and maybe why, So when I came to be made up, and it wasn't a shock to me. It was basically the kind of thing that I'd been trying to do on my own, but much, much, much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw in an interview you gave that you were describing them putting your makeup and your, the sort of the costume on, and for a second they did like the eyelids and you just looked like too much like him.
Well, it wasn't I looked too much. I mean, I would have been happy to look like that, except I couldn't use my eyes. So that's the thing. Then you go into the uncanny valley thing, so the eyelids made me look extraordinarily like him, but I couldn't blink without them sticking, and I couldn't open them wide. And the thing that fascinated me most about watching him is the tiny little dance of, many, many things happening in his eyes. It was expressed in all of these little things, and you couldn't do them. Better to look less like him. So for me, all the way along, in terms of the walk, definitely the accent, there was a point, or because my voice is very different to his, and there was a point when I had to settle on something that was different to him tonally, because in order to push it towards him, it acquired, in the getting of it, a falseness that I couldn't ditch. It suddenly became a voice I was doing. The same with the physicality. There's only certain actors might have been able to go further without it feeling like that. With me, I went up to the point of it feeling forced and thought, I'd rather be criticised for being less like him and still be true in that moment.
One comment on YouTube said, "Never in a gajillion years would I have envisioned Rufus, one of the most broodingly handsome actors on the planet, as Andrew. The physicality is completely different. That's acting."
Oh, that's nice.
Did you take people's disbelief as a compliment, or were you like, or as a challenge?
Not as a challenge. It's a tremendous relief. Oh God, I don't have to worry about disappointing people. They can already fuck off as far as I'm concerned. It's like what I would be in dread of, which happens more often, is I get cast as something that is not easy for me to play. Someone who's like super kind of confident, blah, blah, blah. I think, God, this is going to be so... Hal is not easy for me. And because of certain roles that have been the only kind of role I could get for a while, people think that's what I'm like. The downside of that is that people don't think I'm very clever when I pull it off, but they might think I'm clever when I can do what I think is easy. But for me, hearing that people think I'm miscast is a birthday present. I'm not saying they're going to be wrong, but it means I don't worry about disappointing people. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like I'm playing Mr. Bennett in Pride and Prejudice at the moment. And the idea that people think I'm the wrong casting is like, thank God, I don't have to worry. You know what I mean? At worst, they'll be like, see, I was right. That's easy.
I knew
Yes.
it. Yes. I'm curious because you've played a lot of bad guys before. You were opposite Heath Ledger in Knight's Tale in 2001. And you've said, when I'm described as a villain, it means that something was one-dimensional. What makes what puts you from category of villain to like complex antagonist? What brings you from one-dimensional, or not you per se, but what brings someone from one-dimensional to two-dimensional?
It's just the writing. I mean, Knight's Tale it was lovely to be offered. That was an experiment. I remember saying to my brother, you know what, this is one of those kind of old school bad guys. And he was like, you know what, you might. I said, I know, I kind of got the face for it. It was an experiment, because before my problem had been, when I was at drama school, I was stuck in comedy and character roles. And I came out, I was just playing all kind of odd bods and, great, very, very different kinds of roles. And then I did a thing called Middlemarch, where I played a kind of young guy in one of these great novels. And that became what I was stuck in. And then I played a bad guy. And I loved it. And as far as I'm concerned, a really well-written role that is very, very dark and tortured, and I'm well up for it. It's just... If people then think that is the thing that I do, that's fine, as long as that's not all I get offered. And for a long time, it was very difficult. And again, if I'd been offered really well-written versions, it wouldn't have been a problem. But the really well-written versions were going to people who hadn't done it before, whereas I was being wooed by a successively stupider level of person. So the roles became more and more, I will kill you kind of thing. And that's all I mean. Like when something's really good writing, there's no such thing as like bad guy. These are just terms used for, and you could say that about, good guys, bad guys. I suppose you could use those terms with the Diplomat if you wanted to be really limited about it. But it's just quality of writing, really. And not doing roles
acting too, I mean.
Well, sometimes you say that, but the amount of times when out of need, because I needed to work, and I would not work for months waiting for something good. In the end, there was a period many years ago when waiting for something that wasn't a one-dimensional bad guy, I would get very poor, and I would live very simply. So I wasn't in a financial position where I had to pay for various things. But even so, what invariably ended up happening is the job that I would end up taking would be just slightly worse than what I'd been turning down for 8 months. Thinking, okay, I could act my way through this. But sometimes, if you try to act nuance into something that is essentially black and white, for a start, they'll cut around it if it doesn't help. But secondly, there is a phrase, if you're going to play the pirate, you've got to wear the eye patch. You still have to perform. It's not good acting to not perform the function of the role. It's like people at drama school who complain about being cast as the butler, and they would be a bad butler because of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I want to be a good butler.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is, and it's a stage that I went through, and I don't even mind if people say, "Oh, that guy who plays bad guys." I go, "Yeah, I am," whatever.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm not going to take it out on anyone else.
I mean, I think with Prince Andrew, you do a really good job of portraying his complexity, and he's certainly not one or the other. He's not in one category
like people,
or the other.
Most people,
Yeah. Do you think when playing Prince Andrew, were you ever concerned with I have this responsibility to portray him accurately, or
Yeah. And actually, the pressure is both ways, because there is the concern that you would, show someone in too even a light, right? That actually I felt more that I needed my courage to show aspects of him that were not necessarily easily damnable, because for me, in order to show what people are like, it's very relaxing for an audience to be told this could not be you, but actually, and I'm not saying that could. What I guess I'm saying is that all of us who do bad things, we might think we're not bad because we didn't want to do harm. Often people do bad things because they don't want to be uncomfortable. Often people hurt people because they don't want to go through an awkward moment. Someone would rather decide to leave someone in doubt for years because they just don't want to go through that moment. Often people think that they're good because they don't mean to cause pain, but what they choose does cause pain. It's laziness, it's fear.
Yes.
Never put down to malice what you can dismiss as incompetence.
It sounds like in prepping for this role, or roles in general, you think a lot about sort of the human psychology of why people make certain decisions.
I don't think in such abstract terms. I just try to think, what am I like? What are the people I've known in my life actually like? What do we really do? And sometimes you have to go outside of your own frame of experience. But you have to start with, okay, where... And it's really difficult when you're playing a part like Andrew. Like, okay, so what are the ways, if I'm truly honest, maybe not in the obvious ways that the story is about, what ways have I done something that I'm telling myself is one thing? What are the times when I've felt that me being dishonest is justified because the greater truth that protects is bigger than the thing I'm lying about? You know what I mean? We tell ourselves little tales. And I was struck by the fact that he, like a lot of people, saw himself the victim of that. Even though he knew that he was guilty of a lot of the things, he felt he was a victim of that guilt.
Yeah, and it helps you empathize in a weird way. It helps you empathize a little bit with him. I don't know. It really forces you to put yourself in the shoes of someone you might not have otherwise done.
Yeah, and you could still then make judgments.
Yes.
But the judgments are a little more complicated. I made enormous judgments on him, and I had to kind of deconstruct those. But my judgments haven't changed, but in order to do it, I had to do different things,
So just to talk a little bit about your career sort of at large, you've played so many different types of roles, period dramas, political thrillers. Is there a type of role that still scares you?
Yeah, all kinds of things scare me. But as I said to you before, I don't know if we were recording that, generally, I'm most anxious when I'm supposed to play something that people think is easy for me. Because actually this idea, based on earlier roles I've done of this person with kind of assurance, this is not me. I mean, there is an element of me that's like that, but I have a very different kind of centre to that. But actually, in reality, I'm most relaxed when presented with what other people consider might be a challenge to me. It's normally not the case. Normally things that are very far from me, physically, vocally, are actually where I relax. The happiest I ever was when I was at drama school was when they were trying to miscast me. And I only really fell afoul when they tried to cast me in the third. When I suddenly got cast as this young lover, I did not know what to do with my body. If I had kind of a limp or a hunchback or something like that, I just, at least a slight pirate accent, So it took me a long time to find a way to just be relaxed in what was more a version of myself as far as the outside is concerned. So I just hope to get more and more things that look like challenges to other people, because that's normally when I can feel safest.
Yeah, it sounds like you like being underestimated a little bit.
Yeah, I think so, but probably only because of a pattern that I went through went through when I was just cast a certain way, and felt, especially in England, like I was regarded like a type rather than an actor. That really pisses me off. And but as I said, what that means is that though I sometimes might not feel I get people notice when I'm doing something that's actually really difficult that I manage to make look easy, what sometimes happens is when I do stuff that is actually really easy for me, people then think I'm clever. So one way or another ends up fair, I think,
Yeah. And okay, my last question is, when you're not working, how do you decompress from the intensity of the roles that you play?
Well, I decompress from the intensity of the roles that I play while I play them. I mean, if you were to be on set during, sorry to say it, Scoop, there was a lot of laughter. I mean, when I read that script, it was very wittily written, I have to say. And with The Diplomat, we laugh all the time. It's what you're doing is quite intense, but and again, me and Keri, we have a similar, way of working, is that in order to be able to inhabit that without fuss, we keep it very light, and there's a lot of fooling around. And it's, between the more extreme the actual scene may be, the more dopey our behaviour sometimes might be. There's certain things that you need to kind of keep going while you're in a bit of a moment, but a lot of the time, that's the way it is for me, and always has been. But as I get older, I'm better and better at not working. I really like not working.
I mean, yeah, me too.
But also that's to do with the fact that I'm really enjoying my work at the moment, so I'm not feeling frustrated about not being able to express myself. I think a few years ago, when I was doing work that I felt I was kind of fighting with my arms tied behind my back some of the time, I think I was more frustrated in my time off then. But I think it's a very good sign that I kind of enjoy just not doing anything for a while and look forward to a new season coming back.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to the latest season of The Diplomat. I'm very, very excited, and thank you so much for being on the show. It's
Lovely
such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.